welcome to the Red Diamond Wargame Podcast. I am your host, Major Kurt Locker Honig, and joining me today are the Marines of Team Belleau Devils, Major Nate Gnomebody Rogers, and Major Chris Pink Sheets Lau, the current reigning Commandant's Cup champion. The Belleau Devils are one of 9 qualifying teams participating in this year's Commandant's Cup, and they will be traveling to modern-day Marine from Marine Forces Europe, Africa. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me today.
Good to be here.
Please note that all opinions expressed are entirely those of the participants and do not reflect the United States Marine Corps, their units, or any other organizations of which they are a part. So let's kick things off with a little bit of background. Nate, why don't you introduce yourself, your background, and how you came into wargaming?
Nate, so background Marine Corps wise is all I've known. So I enlisted back in 2006. Started my time as an AAV operator, then I jumped over to Intel as an imagery analyst, went the MECEP route, became an air intel officer, spent some time out in 29 Palms, which was probably the best duty station I've ever been at. And then I went over to Quantico, and this is where you'll probably lose some viewers. I was a monitor for a couple of years, and then I got orders out to MFEA, where I'm the special security officer now. Outside of that, the tabletop piece to it, grew up Axis and Allies, Risk mostly, and I think that seems to be a theme. And then I get a little older, got sick of looking at Xbox and PlayStations. And it's like, I wonder what's happening in the world of tabletop these days. And then slowly got back into that, which with the Marine Corps experience, you slowly go into wargaming more and more. And so I'm still new to the formal wargaming aspect of a lot of it, but it's been a lot of fun, especially when you have somebody like Chris pushing you to do better.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Chris, over to you. A little brief background and remind all of us how you got into wargaming.
Alrighty. Hello. I'm Chris, call signs Pink Sheets. I am the space planner at MARFOREURAF. Got into the Navy in 2008, commissioned 2010. Survived being a SWO for a couple of years out in Japan. Came into the Marine Corps in 2014. Did LAD for a good bit, and then switched over to space, maritime space officer when they started that up. As far as wargaming, pretty similar to Nate. Axis and Allies, diplomacy, the usual suspects, and then kind of fell off for a bit, and then came back into tabletop in a decently big way with the BattleTech Kickstarter. Got back into slapping paint on minis and throwing dice on the tables, and then that combined with at Expeditionary Warfare School resident in Quantico. I lucked out there when Sebastian brought his prototype Littoral Commander to use all of us as guinea pigs for, and I fell in love with that system, and especially with the whole PME resurgence of wargaming in general. Just took it for a ride, and lucked out that there was already a couple, when I came out to MARFOREURAF, there was already a couple people in a little board gaming group, and now we'll swap games at lunch and things like that. And we were able to get a team together for the Warplan 44 tournament. I couldn't convince one of the team guys actually at MARFOREURAF to do the Commandant's Cup, and then I lucked into running into Nate and asked him to join with, and he said, sure, what the hell not.
Yeah, awesome. That's a great way to create a team. For my own teammate, I had to reach way back to a security cooperation deployment I did. And I was trying to think of who would be interested in wargaming. It's like, I don't remember if my guy was actually into it, and was able to drag him along into Warplan, and then he seemed to be engaged in it. So it's like, all right, let's see if you're willing to do this Commandant's Cup journey with us. So Commandant's Cup, there were 2 primary qualifying tournaments, each with 2 rounds. The games were Company Commander Modern and Flashpoint Campaigns Pro. The tournaments was the Top Tactics Team and Expeditionary Engagements. So, Nate, was this your first experience with Company Commander?
Yeah. So, and Chris got a lot of messages back and forth, like, oh, you know how you told me, like, don't forget to launch drones? I forgot to launch drones. Nice. You know how you told me to set people up? I forgot to deploy them right. I just click go. So there was some learning pains. We got a couple practice games going right now as well to keep everything rolling. So I got buttonology down as well.
Nice. What's your first impression of the game itself?
I enjoyed it. So it was a lot easier than what I thought it would be to learn it. Normally, this may be backwards, I enjoy the physical games. It's easier for me to pick them up because I can have a rule book in my hand and so like manipulate pieces. Computer games are a little harder for me to pick up on, but mechanically, it all made sense to me, and it wasn't that big of a barrier to get over once I had some of it down.
That makes a lot of sense. I know Tim Barrick, the wargaming director at Marine Corps University, has highlighted Company Commander as one of the best games to introduce people into wargaming because it is able to keep a lot of dynamic moving parts into a format that is understandable. It keeps the momentum of the game going, and it keeps the enjoyment of the game. What'd you think about some of the scenarios that we played?
Let's see. I mean, the airport ate me up. That one hurt. I'm still working through some of the after actions on how I can work that one. The beach worked a little bit better for me. I do enjoy the difference in the maps that are used. Just different problem sets altogether, which is always good, right? Like you want a little bit of overlap because things seem a little familiar, but you want enough separation that you don't feel like you're just running through the same things over and over.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Chris, you've done both the Top Tactics tournaments in 24 and 25, including this qualifying tournament. What was your impression of the difference in scenarios?
As much as I enjoyed 24 for the experimentation, I thought that was the greatest value for it. 25 is definitely much more tournament fair. Because, I mean, we've talked about this before. In 24, you had some unlucky guy decided, I'm going to create a tank company. And then, meanwhile, everyone else is like, we have drones, you have craters. Whereas this one, it's fair where, I mean, like we've discussed before, it's the same scenario, you play each side, and then then it just comes down to how well your plan is against their plan with a little bit of, RNGesus in the way.
Mm-hmm.
But tournament-wise, it's much more fair. It's still interesting scenarios with the Taiwan scenario. But yeah, it's definitely, tournament-wise, it's much more fair and friendly for the tournament. Less wild card factors of someone making a horrendous mistake in a force composition prior to a match.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. There's no force design component on this one. It's just simply taking what's given and making the best out of it. Did you find anything in particular out of an airport air assault scenario, an amphibious assault with a beach scenario, anything in particular stood out to you as that went extremely well that you would have liked to have seen different?
I mean, the airport assault's just tough. It just depends from, as the Taiwanese, it's just you have to defend everywhere all at once at the beginning, and then trying to figure out where the West Taiwanese start dropping things and where they're trying to go. So it's just that gambit that, they face in real life. It's like we have to defend everything and then figure out what's priority 1, 2, and 3 and try and stop them from that. Beach scenarios also, I think, is a pretty good one. It's trying to figure out how you can keep your important pieces alive long enough that it disrupts them on the way in. You're not going to really be able to stop them. Just numbers-wise at the start, you don't have enough missiles and long-range fires to stop them from hitting the beach. But it's about degrading them and slowing them down enough that you can really, if once they hit the beach, that you can try and keep them trapped there and just inflict pain. Whereas on the other side, trying to breach rapidly enough that you can start clearing a path through the defenses to exploit. Yeah,
that makes a lot of sense. So in force design, you worry that even though both drawing out of an allocation of about 250 points and whatnot. You have the chance of creating unfairness. In this tournament, there is no unfairness per round because everyone's doing the exact same scenario. So, Nate, just because this is your first experience not dealing with any kind of force design where you get to build a force out of a certain amount of allowance, did it feel like blue and red were pretty even? Or did you feel like one side was weighted versus the other in each scenario?
I mean, I know for the airport, I would struggle defending. So that was a big one in the airport. It seemed like, I mean, I think we've played that scenario, including the tournament. I think this is our 6th time. We got a game going right now and that is still, like, I did the thing where I just pulled everybody back into the terminal. I was like, maybe this works. Put little pockets of defense out, and for whatever reason, I cannot figure out how I'm supposed to defend this, which is great, right? It's a good problem to have, because that means we keep experimenting, we keep figuring out, like, how do we use some of these tools, because that may be something, right? Like, you only have so much, so I can appreciate it for how hard it is, right? Like, make it hard. The beach, I do think it seems pretty fair on what you have, right? If you're defending, you may not have as much coming in, but you have the positions. Whereas red, you have more coming in, but you have to take a beach. You have to secure a foothold. So I think the beach is very well balanced. Not to say the airport isn't balanced, it's just its own separate problems. And I think that's what's great about everything that this is giving players problem sets, figure it out, because each one of us wants to attack it differently too. And that's where the learning comes in, which makes this whole thing as good as it is.
Yeah, and one of the big challenging learning points, despite, like, not to include the scenario itself, is the fact that you're representing Republic of China, Taiwanese forces for the first time. And so now trying to use a Marine Corps blueprint isn't necessarily going to work because the assets that you have are different. Did you run into any challenges in kind of learning a friendly suite of weapon systems versus what you would have expected to see out of a Marine Corps suite?
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm still doing it. I'll still look around like, okay, why is this not doing what I want it to do? Okay, which, again, all part of it, and it's great. I cannot overstate, like, how valuable from a learning perspective. It's great. I love playing games, but yeah, not something I looked at a whole lot. I've been primarily focused European theater-wise for most of my career as well. So there's another learning curve there. So it was really, and it has been really great to have to figure that out. And maybe that's where tactics have to change. Because I don't have a MegTAF with me right now. I don't have the thing that, that's all you read about all the time in your career. And it's like, well, that's not here. So how do I now employ these assets?
Yeah, I think that's awesome. And now, Chris, you participated in the Top Tactics individual tournament, so you got to see the round 3, which was a Taipei port. So you combined elements of the airport, you combined elements of the amphibious assault. Now you have an expanded scenario where you have both an amphibious assault and an air assault, sustaining the quote-unquote success of the original PRC air assault. Does that scenario feel as balanced as what Nate's describing for the first 2 scenarios?
So far, I would say yes.
Okay.
Admittedly, that round, my opponent just disappeared. So we didn't actually get to play through the full thing, and Nate and I are playing through it right now. It does seem fairly balanced so far, and I think also the interesting part is as the Taiwanese, you have your blue line along the beach, and you're trying to hold that, but then you also have that pocket in your rear that you have to deal with, and that has some, not much, but it has some decent enough stuff that it can become a real problem. But we're still fleshing that one out. I'm sure you're doing the same thing where we're taking what we did last year and trying to overlap or template what we learned about this year's stuff so far and try and figure out how everything goes. And we may not get to the third scenario because I think last year was just like, you did 2 matches and then you moved on. So we'll see how. I'm very interested to see how things develop for this year's schedule.
Yep, absolutely. So for the team, Top Tactics team, we got to have the first 2 scenarios. The individuals got to do a third scenario. It does sound like there has been a Commandant's Cup specific scenario that has been developed. Now, whether that's for like a finals round or whether that's for all the different teams to participate in, is there something, Chris, that you're interested in seeing in a 4th round? Is that something that you would like to see a continuation of a Taiwan theme or something else?
I would love to see a continuation of the Taiwan theme. Also, I think it's the I want to say Bicycle Lake, but do you remember that one from earlier this year? Whereas the lake scenario, U.S. versus China across that giant open desert with some terrain features along either side.
Yep.
It might be that one.
A U.S. Army forces.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be somewhere out like the National Training Center.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, that was an interesting scenario. But again, I've always loved whatever Tim and the team develop. It's always interesting seeing what they come up with.
And Hexwar Keith is always excited to develop something new and interesting. So whether it could be an evolution or, I don't want to say recycling because that's not the right term, but bringing to the forefront a pre-existing scenario that might have some finishing touches applied to it for the cup itself might also be a really, really engaging scenario. What about you, Nate? What are you hoping to see out of a company commander final?
Oh, I mean, you're not going to like this answer. This is the, oh shucks, I don't know what I don't know. I'm just happy to be here. So, yeah, I mean, if they put in, if we got a 29 Palms scenario, I'm pretty familiar with all those terrain areas, so that'd be a big one.
Well, then you would have enjoyed Top Tactics 24 when we were all fighting over, I don't even remember which training area it was, but it was very... I was about to call it the Delta T, but I know it wasn't that. But it definitely felt very Delta T-esque, right? You're just trying to get to the northwest in order to win the scenario, or defeat 60% of your enemy, something like that. No, I think it would be fascinating if there was an evolution of the scenario where you got to employ a Marine Corps rifle company in support of ROC assets that are trying to re-engage, whether it's seizing the airport back from someone else or an evolution there. I know there's an Anderson airfield on Guam scenario that exists, maybe something along those lines. What would your reaction be to a situation like that, Chris?
The Anderson scenario is actually pretty interesting. We played through that a couple of times. I even played against Tim for that one. So that's. I remember that was the first one of the new round of stuff that I played, and it was really interesting because that's when, like, later on, it's like, oh, here's helicopter reinforcements. You better, pay attention to the sides of the map when we start throwing new units at you, because the game doesn't well, now it kind of gives you the little blinker in the middle. It's like, reinforcements have arrived or are available, but kind of just paying attention to. Because especially in the tournament situation, you're trying to stay on the clock, but you also don't want to forget. Oh, well, if I forget the UAVs coming in for a cycle, that puts me a cycle behind of where I need to be. Yep. So yeah, time definitely is. It's a luxury now, but then when we get there, then it really becomes a ticking clock.
Yeah, absolutely, and it also is a question that I've not been able to get a straight answer out of Hexwar Keith. And I don't know if it's because it's by design, but I've always understood, especially in something like the Taipei port scenario where you have different avenues of reinforcements, where if you make progress as red towards one of those avenues or you put ISR assets, it might actually turn off that avenue of approach. and that becomes its own decision-making cycle that says, okay, I know the heavy armor can only come through this direction, so if I turn off that avenue by utilizing indirect fires or putting ISR, like noticeable drone ISR there, the computer itself will have to push those reinforcements to somewhere else, and that can completely change the dynamic of your planning capability, where now it's like you can't just play the game and anticipate where your reinforcements are going to come from. Now you have to recognize, like, I have to preserve some of these avenues of approach for my reinforcements, or else I'm not going to be able to achieve the scheme of maneuver that I had in mind. And that might just be, me going a little over over the deep end on what possibilities, but I think that'd be a very fascinating dynamic to add to a situation like this.
And I think that was a factor in the individual tournament, especially for the airport scenario, where I think I scenarioed it, and then I actually tried it for a little bit, where if you dropped infantry, as the Chinese, you dropped infantry and were able to, camp on top of some of the reinforcement points. It would stop it, but then I think they patched it and fixed it, so then that infantry is there and they're trying to stop the reinforcements all, and they have all the reinforcements around them, and then they don't last too long.
I think it's interesting to see something that was originally a bug might turn into a feature. It might actually turn into calculus for how that would turn out. I don't know. I think that'd be interesting. Either way, and I don't know if you've already prepped Nate for this, but we were only given 3 hours to play out our turn. So you either achieve the victory criteria, which was defined by the scenario itself. A lot of times, 60 to 70% of the enemy being destroyed as being the most simple, or a certain number of victory points within a certain number of turns, or just who has the most surviving units and/or victory points at the end of turn 20. Or it was supposed to be once 3 hours went off the clock. That way everyone had a reasonable opportunity to, get up and stretch before they had to go play another game, because it could get pretty intense. But we'll see if any of these scenarios kind of reflect that time limitation. We don't want to be too bogged down. I don't know how much prep Chris has been able to give you, Nate, in terms of this is what it looked like whenever we were able to play last year.
We've talked through, like, I guess big blue arrows, if you want to use that term, right? It's like, this is what you can expect. We haven't gone over the clock as much. Really, it's just been focusing on playing through some more scenarios and me getting more comfortable with the systems.
Yeah. Well, the other system that we got to play was the Flashpoint Campaigns Professional Edition. So that was the Expeditionary Engagements Tournament. Nate, what was your first impression of that tournament?
So it was exciting, to say the least. So the first one, I think around turn 2, my opponent stopped participating.
No.
But yeah, so that worked out. The second round was when some of the bugs came out, and you saw a lot of people posting about, my air isn't taking off, or they took off without people. Luckily, me and my opponent both had that same issue.
Okay.
So we both experienced the same friction points from, competitive standpoint. We talked like, hey, I did this thing to try to troubleshoot it, working together to get things moving. But I enjoyed working through that because of anytime you do stuff, right? Like, it could be any type of training, any type of field exercise. There's friction that you have no idea where it's coming from. And what I really enjoyed is, with the type of operation that we're trying to do, me clicking buttons and right-clicking, is like, yeah, everything's going to work fantastic. And so the fact that you had a plan that, okay, this wave's going to have these people coming in. They're going to land here. They're going to have this type of support. Well, all of a sudden that support didn't leave. So now what are they doing? Okay, now they're stranded on the beach. They don't have the support. Like, what do I need to do to preserve these forces while I figure out what's going on over here? So it probably wasn't bacon. Maybe it was. Maybe, that was the whole point. But I thoroughly enjoyed the bug for that one, because, again, just having to work through a lot of that. But then, obviously, Chris and I are doing a practice match, and I forget to turn cargo into serialized cargo, and so, learning semi occurred.
Yeah, sometimes it's too bad when you have to default to some gameisms like that in order to make them work, because it doesn't reflect a real world planning process, right? Like, no one's going to be confused about the difference between cargo and serialized cargo when you're actually on the ship planning all this movement. They're going to be much more into the more similar, ASATs and ASLATs of, this is who I want to go on these helicopters at this time. It's simply more straightforward. So that being said, it's still good to embrace the friction that's coming through and the decisions that you can't hide from at that point, right? If you don't embrace it, you're just going to get bogged down in frustration. So, yeah, I have to say I only got to play part of one round because my opponent disappeared on the first one completely and was sporadic at best on the second one. But that being said, it's still a fascinating scenario, pretty similar to what we saw at the Commandant's Cup last year. Chris, what was your experience in expeditionary engagements?
Both my opponents played on the little of the slower end, but overall I think it went well, and I was able to test out decently solid strategy for probably what we'll see. Probably what I'll use in the tournament. Just I'll probably have some more experimentation to run in the next couple weeks, and then Nate and I have another practice match or two. Right now we're playing through the Taipei scenario, or the Taiwan scenario, and that is an interesting kettle of fish to begin with. But no, for the Muse scenario, I mean, I miss having all the extra bells and whistles from last year, but I do understand how the necessity of slimming it down for tournament play, because Company Commander last year, I think we only had 2 matches the entire time go into overtime, but Flashpoint Campaign was the one that really went to the buzzer every time. Even though some turns you're just clicking, okay, I see all the actions, but the plan's still good, go.
Yep.
But then especially the first turn always takes the longest, and making sure everything, first turn takes the longest, get everything set right, and then it should just be little adjustments here and there depending how well you planned it. But yeah, very much Flashpoint's the time eater, whereas Company Commander is fairly straightforward. But yeah, I'm interested to see what all people throw into the mix when we get to DC.
Yep. Yeah, the Taipei scenario, Tim on Discord kind of hinted that maybe that was a scenario that we could see at the Commandant's Cup. So you've already talked about it being a particularly interesting kettle of fish. What about it, Chris, do you think is what piece gives you the most interest in that scenario?
Well, to back it up to last year, the finals round was Marine Infantry Company Reinforced against Marine Infantry Company Reinforced. Mirror match, 29 palms. Whoever gets to the little mesa plateau and holds it wins. And I mean, that one went well for me. But then I remember Tim saying he wanted to try and keep it smaller and simpler, so that way it wouldn't advantage one side or the other more. But now I see, if we do see Taipei again, he's gone the devious way of, okay, everyone's got everything. Prioritize what you're going to move. You only have so much time to get your plan in place, set your stuff up, and then go at it. Because again, if with the planning chess clock, because what was it? It's 3-hour window. You each get, was it an hour and a half on the chess clock?
I think it was only 45 minutes.
Yeah, but then you click it, and once the time's out, your plan still moves forward. You just can't adjust it. So the chess clock goes out, and mine did go out at the finals round. But you receive the turn, you upload it, you watch the action, you click start, and then you send it back over to the other guy. So this one, with how much stuff there is, because it's two army groups against each other, I could see it very much being getting in quick, understanding the situation and the mission, and then placing, prioritizing. Because potentially there could be like an entire flank that just doesn't move and doesn't do anything because all the action's on the other side of the map.
Mm-hmm.
Just between not getting around to moving that stuff or just reacting to the scenario with how many, because each side has well over 150, 200 units.
I mean, it's a lot.
So it's, I think, again, if we see that, it's Tim being somewhat true to what he said last year, but in one of the most devious ways possible. And okay, instead of making things really simple, I'm going to make things big, and then how well do you prioritize and plan quickly?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Nate, have you gleaned anything from any practice rounds using the Taipei scenario?
We're still in it. Chris did a nice blitz. I don't know if I'm giving away the secrets, but he did a pretty good blitz on me. Cut right through some of my defensive lines, and he is causing chaos in the back right now, which I'm soaking up more time dealing with that than anything else. For my side, I mean, I masked and landed on the beach, and it's slow going right now. So we'll see if it works out for me. But it was definitely more standard. Okay, we're gonna do this thing. We're gonna mass forces. I'm gonna secure this flank. Start moving up some more. But from Chris's side, how fast he got back there to start hitting my indirect fire assets that are there. That was definitely a note for how to replicate that on our next round, and how many forces are you willing to commit, or what risk are you willing to accept to try to do that?
Yeah, the ultimate challenge to Chris's point is, without the chess clock, it's very difficult to replicate the time crunch that you're probably going to be under into assessing the situation. Which units are you going to spend the time to issue new orders and turn them loose and let them go? And what kind of orders are you going to give so that you're not simply reacting to what your opponent is doing, but you can actually achieve some type of objective? You can actually have your units work towards something that you don't have to constantly spend that chess clock time to issue new orders. And so I'm with Chris on this one. If we see that one at the Commandant's Cup, I think it's because Tim is really trying to pull out the stops in terms of seeing how do these guys receive information and then prioritize what's important. Can they manage that efficiently and effectively? And I think as challenging as that's going to be, I think a lot of the participants in the Commandant's Cup are going to be up for it. So that'll be a lot of fun to play with. The downside, though, is that there are, as the scenario certainly sits, a lot of SOP management that has to go in there. And again, I mean, I'm one for tradecraft and trying to win, but I also want to beat the best version of Chris or Nate if that's who I get to sit across the table from and play. So I'm not super interested in having some secret method that I've discovered and kept to myself. But that's what I have learned very quickly is, okay, how this game sets up SOPs is incredibly important. If I do nothing else in turn one, I got to spend time fixing that before I even start issuing any orders, because it will dramatically shape how the rest of the game goes. And that's just too bad. But Nate, what preparation has Chris given you for the tabletop game that we have coming up, Joint Tactics Arena?
So I have the instruction, the rule book that you both talked about. So that's printed up. Came with me on the weekend leave, and then I didn't look at it. So nice. I owe some time to that rule book. So we'll be studying that one, and then after I read that, Chris and I are going to sit down, so he can walk through some more with me. And then hopefully we have, from what you both are saying, a revised rule book. So then we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I don't know. Chris can make me a mock-up and walk me through it. I'm sure he has the time.
Yeah. Space Force guys, they're not doing anything important for sure. Do you have any operational wargame experience?
I do not. So that
Okay.
a lot of the wargaming, this is all new. So this is my first sort of foray into it. The closest I can get to probably is standard development. When I was Hot 20 Homes working with TTCG,
Okay.
doing force on force, right? But
Sure.
it's a lot different from a tabletop war game type scenarios.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Now I mean, Tim, if you're not aware of the background, Tim himself developed the operational wargame system on the Marine Corps' dime, and continues to lead and expand that product. And Joint Tactics Arena is his tournament version of the operational wargame system. But and again, diving into the rules, right, that might or might not be being refined right now by Tim. Hopefully he's not listening to what we're going to discuss and then change it on us, just to keep us guessing. Is hopefully going to have the final product ready for us, not only for the Commandant's Cup, but so that we can purchase eventually, and by we I mean units, and start getting them distributed. Because, and Chris and I have talked about this before, in my opinion, the operational wargame system is one of the very best tools we have to teach both adversary, partner, ally capabilities, our own capabilities, and what the future force could look like, what future conflict could look like. And I think one of the best gateways to understanding and employing OWS is through Joint Tactics Arena. And I'd love to see every unit have a copy so that they can actually start playing, get Marines interested in, like, I want to roll this map out, I want to pull out all these chips and pieces and start rolling the dice, because it's really engaging in that way. I can't compliment Tim enough that it's one of the few games I spent 3 hours playing, lost, and immediately wanted to play again, because that's the type of game. So, Chris, with all that being said, what are you hoping to see, if any, refinement on the Joint Tactics Arena rules in this year's Commandant's Cup?
I'm not sure about the rules themselves. Like, it seemed I got my handle around it, between all the reading beforehand, and then day one we get the intro. We get to, was it the afternoon? Should be running through JTA with the umpires.
Mm-hmm.
I know, because I did stop by Quantico a couple months back, and I did run into Tim. So I think the biggest change we may see is the map.
Interesting.
Because you remember last year, there was a lot of everyone doing the armored blitz as the first move. He did say they changed the terrain to prevent that from happening.
Interesting.
And I know I've talked with Nate a little bit about this, but essentially you can essentially blitz from your side to the capital city, which was the two cities next to each other, and take it, which is a 40-point swing at the start, because it was 10 points per city, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a 40-point swing right at the start, and then they have to try and dig armor out of a city, which really wrecks the plan. I will be interested to see what else they do. Maybe we get some more interceptors. I know, much like in real life, the amount of interceptors was very small, especially compared to the amount of long-range strike assets. I'm interested to see if there will be more naval play. Maybe. I know that one that just depended on the matches. Sometimes the ships did a lot of stuff. Sometimes they didn't. I managed to pretty much wipe out my opponent's navy with with my destroyers and the submarine. I don't think anyone did any amphibious landings.
I did.
It was I think just too contested of an environment to try and risk that one.
Speak for yourself. I was playing a Canadian. I absolutely conducted an amphibious landing. The problem fundamentally with the amphibious landing is that I couldn't then move and actually attack anything.
Right.
So I was able to get there, and I did it successfully, but then I couldn't move, and I had to wait for my next opportunity to employ a brigade movement action action point or action card, and that was at that point it was ineffective. At that point, he was able to, be into a city and make it significantly more difficult to assault, and that really negated the immediate value of the amphibious assault. So I am not giving up on it, but I'm also a grunt who really believes in the Mew concept, and so I'm probably holding on to it a little too tightly. That being said, I'm curious if in a 3-hour time period where you've got a goal of 3 turns, we had 6 action points to draw from. I wonder if he's looking at changing that at all, whether that's bringing it down or bringing it up, just as a way to get the movement of the game progressing a little bit more. Do you bring it down to, say, 5 action points and strive for 4 turns just to get more activity occurring? Because I do think the games were pretty tight, points-wise.
And I don't think any game actually completed
a third.
Quote,
yeah, I don't think so either. Yeah.
It all went to time and then finished out. So like for my game, it lucked out because my turn ended up being the one right at the buzzer, so I got to finish out the turn, and then he didn't have a response for it. I guess rules wise, it'll be interesting to see if there's any streamlining or speeding up of play to get more things done, or actually finish the match in the time limit. Because Company Commander, that goes quick. Flashpoint campaigns take some time, but typically finished up. But then, JTA that's definitely especially for like a PME thing, you could turn that easily into a 2-day thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, Nate, I mean, just based on what you're hearing from us and the rule book that you haven't looked at yet, is there anything you're hoping to experience out of JTA?
I don't know if I'd say like what I'd be experiencing. I'm hoping that there's a lot of overlap with some of the other games I've played. So that way, depending on how the counters are, depending on how the mechanics work. Like when you're talking with the action points and then the cards, it's like, okay, that sounds a lot like the same system Sebastian used with Littoral Commander, and you buy cards to, have attached units and whatnot. So hopefully there's a lot of overlap to where, just like you learn in other games, okay, I understand the basic concept, which is always good because we all talk about how do I introduce Marines into wargaming? How do I teach them to do that? So the more games that have those overlaps reduces the barrier of entry for them. So now one game may be really good teaching small unit tactics, and then you have another one doing operational, very different. But if we have mechanics that overlap like that, it's just going to help everybody get more involved, which I think is the end state, right, for doing a lot of what we're doing.
Yep, absolutely. And I will tell you that the very polite Lex Luciak is who defeated me last year, which, in all fairness, now that he has won the Top Tactics team tournament, it makes me feel that much better. So he's clearly doing something well if he's winning overall tournaments like that. But he compared it a lot to Littoral Commander in his approach to, okay, I've not really played this game before. There are elements that remind me of Littoral Commander, so I'm going to apply some of those lessons into how I conduct this game. And for better or for worse, he was successful in beating me, even if I was able to actually do an amphibious assault, which I thought was still pretty cool. But he also destroyed some of my air assets very early on, which, F-15s are all well and good in the game. If you're not aware, it's based on, I believe, the Peruvian military. So you have air assets, both local and that have some extended range. But when you lose those air assets with the extended range, it dramatically reduces your ability to project forces forward. And I didn't learn that until mine were smoking hulks on the ground. And he continued to be able to conduct strikes from the air on me, and I simply could not respond because any assets that could respond had already been expended or had been destroyed. And it gave him maybe not a decisive advantage, but it was something I was unable to overcome. So you have a lot of fun headed your way when it comes to Joint Tactics Arena. So you guys are going to be joining us from MARFOREURAF, which is in Germany. So obviously we're all curious, is Marine Corps University paying for first class tickets for both of you to fly over and join us in DC? And I'll see which one of you is brave enough to answer that one first.
I think they got me a dog kennel. I'm not sure about Nate.
So I think it's a Graybird back into BWI and then hump it from there.
There you go. Yeah, gotta save costs somehow. I think the funniest part as a reservist of trying to see about having some kind of money to let us go is there's too busy paying for Marines to come all the way from Okinawa and from Germany to participate in this game that I from North Carolina can't be bothered because it's just too much money already spent in order to get good Marines there. All right. Well, I'm very excited to see you there. Nate, before I let you go, I have to put to you the same question that I've given to Chris a couple of times. The goal of this podcast is to get more Marines into wargaming. And to that end, Chris and I and all the other guests have talked about how we have a Commandant's reading list, whereby the Commandant has put out a list of books that suggests that if Marines read these, they will be better Marines, better leaders, better warriors, and that we argue should also see a Commandant's wargaming list. If a wargaming list was created, what titles would you like to see on that list?
Oh, I wasn't ready for that. Chris did not prepare me for that one. One, I'm a big fan. I think if you have a unit library, there should be war games involved.
Absolutely.
I think if we're talking lower threshold for barrier of entry, Take the Hill.
Okay.
I think that one's easy and it scales up, so you can start from basics. I think the same one if you're going hobby-wise. Memoir 44 and Undaunted, I think, are both fun systems that Marines can attach to, easy to learn. I should throw a heavy one in here. Oh, let's see. Heavy. Chris, what's a heavy one we've been talking about at work? Excited. I'm trying to go through a couple of them.
I mean, there's always a campaign for North Africa, but
yeah, well, that's only if you like to haze yourself. That's a fun to look at game.
I think
Yes.
Tim has a copy of that game in his office, by the way.
I love his office.
His office is
have you been
amazing.
there?
Absolutely,
Oh,
and it is a monument to someone had money. And he didn't buy those, I don't think, but someone at some point was like, we should buy more war games, and they just bought a bunch, including campaigns of North Africa, which, like every version of Campaign of North Africa that's ever been produced, remains unopened,
Yeah.
as it should be, because there's just no way.
So that should be the finals.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
We'll throw, for a heavier one, I don't think it's that heavy, but Bolt Action, which is more freeform, but I thoroughly enjoy that one.
All right. Awesome. Well, Chris, Nate, I want to thank you very much for your time. I know you're staying up a little bit later, calling in from Germany, and we appreciate all of your insights and feedback, and I look forward to seeing you guys in person at Modern Day Marine for the Commandant's Cup. Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.